First of all, I want to say thank you to everyone so much for joining us on our very first webinar. I also want to say I apologize for any technical issues or difficulties that we might have had. This is our first one, and apparently we forgot that there's multiple time zones in the United States, and so some of you might have got the wrong time, but you made it, so we're happy about that. We're going to do this webinar once a month. It's going to be on the first Tuesday at 5:30 Mountain Time every month. And we're going to cover a variety of topics, mostly focused around real estate investing and finance and that kind of thing. That's really our specialty. It's going to either be Justin, who's here with me today, it'll be Travis, and or myself, at least for the first several, and then we'll start bringing in some guests and really give you the education that you guys deserve and what you need and what you're asking for. My name is Kevin Amolsch. I'm the founder of Pine Financial. I've been in real estate for quite a while. I've been doing deals for 15 years. I've done over 150 deals as either a buyer or a seller, 900 loans, 900 deals as a private lender, mostly with Pine Financial. And I've got a little over 30 rental units, down from over 50. I just sold a multifamily 23-unit building in Branson, Missouri, so now I'm down to about 30 rentals. I'm also developing a large parcel of property in Colorado, a suburb of Denver, and 17 townhomes throughout the Denver neighborhood. So I've got quite a lot of experience in investing and lending money and doing transactions. I got started at a really young age by using owner carry strategies and hard money. I got started when I was in college, so I was broke. I needed to learn how to do deals with no money. And that's what really brought me into the hard money lending business, and why I think that this webinar with Justin and I teaming up together is really going to be supportive of what you guys need and what you're looking for. I did become a hard money lender in 2006 working with a partner, and we split, and I started Pine Financial in 2008. Pine Financial, for those of you that don't know, is a leading hard money lender in Colorado and Minnesota, and we're quickly picking up steam out in DC. You know, we're really excited about this new expansion to DC, and that's really what pushed these webinars. It's hard for us to travel out there. I know Justin's been doing a lot of traveling and getting out there as much as he can, but this is a good way for us to touch you, be in front of you, and work with you without all the travel. So we're really excited to be able to do this. We have access to over $50 million, and it's all private equity. We have no debt. And we say we're going to fund a deal, we're going to fund a deal. We've never missed a closing. Today's webinar, we're so excited to be part of, we're going to be discussing hard money and why savvy investors are using hard money to build their fortune. You know, it's not just for the broke, it's not just for the credit challenged. It works for that also, but it's really for the savvy investors that want to do multiple deals, lots of transactions, and make a fortune. Okay, I think Justin's going to go over several case studies as well. We talked a little bit about that, so he's going to be going over several different case studies and how to use hard money. And I think that's going to give you the good insight of what this is all about. So Justin Cooper, I'm so excited to have you here. You know, you're a top performer. You're one of the top loan officers with Pine Financial, and you're leading the charge for the DC market. You have significant experience. I know you've done some development. You've got some rental properties. This is awesome because I'm looking right at you here. And you've got a tremendous amount of experience lending hard money. So I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here. You're an industry expert. I know you get calls all the time, people asking for your advice. So Justin, I'm going to go ahead and let you take over here and tell us a little bit more about you and then get us into this class.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. I really appreciate the opportunity, both with Pine Financial and then as a whole, for putting together the webinar. It was Kevin's idea that we should be doing these webinars, and I think it's going to be really powerful, not just to help us touch everybody out in DC and on the East Coast, but also just on a national level. We get calls all the time for people all over the place, not just in Colorado, Minnesota, and DC where we're lending, but all over the place. And it's going to be a great opportunity for us to really help share our knowledge and experience with people all over the country. So specifically to everybody who's here, and I see people are still jumping in on the call, really appreciate each and every one of you coming. Like Kevin had mentioned, there may have been a little confusion on the timing of everything, but it is our first one, so bear with us as we figure out this this whole webinar thing here. But for those of you on the call, there's spots for questions, there's spots to chat. Definitely feel free and fill those things out. Raise your hand. You can even do that on the webinar. So feel free and raise your hand, ask questions as we get going. As Kevin had mentioned, I've been with Pine Financial for several years now. I did my first fix and flip, my very first investment property back in 2007. And if anybody was around investing in 2007, you know it was probably a great time if you knew what you were doing. But for me, who really had no idea, It did not work out well. I wound up losing about $9,000, and been retelling that story over and over again. Actually wound up putting together a class, 5 surefire ways to lose money on your first fix and flip. Little hindsight being 2020, went back through and realized all the different ways that I really screwed up that deal. So when I approach whatever it's going to be, whether a class like this, a one-on-one consultation, working with borrowers who want to use hard money, I really rely on that experience and everyone since then in the real estate investing world to help other people not lose money. It's not fun. I don't care who says it is. It's not fun to lose money.
It's not?
I didn't enjoy it. But that being said, you've looked at our handsome faces long enough, I think, here. Let's dive into what is hard money. Let's get going on this presentation. You guys are sacrificing your evening to be with us tonight. We really appreciate that, and we value your time. So hard money, so what is it? So it's been used for several different things over the years, and hard money isn't a new thing, even though you may have just heard of it or you may start hearing it through the different gurus and stuff, but hard money's been around for quite a long time. The first point there, equity lending. A lot of what we do as hard money lenders is lending based on the equity in the property. So of course equity is when you're looking at what the value today is versus how much you owe on it. So if the house is worth $200,000 and you owe $150,000, that difference, that $50,000 spread would be your equity. So a lot of times hard money is based on that equity spread. And what we're going to be talking about today is not today's as-is value, but tomorrow's ARV, the after repair value. And we're going to be talking about the spread between that after repair value and what your costs are going to be. So we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that. Hard money used to be used for a foreclosure bailout. Kevin, what do you think that refers to there as a foreclosure bailout?
Yeah, and I want to touch on that equity lending also, because hard money is not strictly equity-based lending like it used to be. Justin, when I started, and maybe not long after, or right before you started probably, hard money lending was really, if you could fog a mirror by putting it in front of your face, you were approved, right? As long as you were breathing, you were approved because it was all based on the equity in the project. What you're saying is absolutely true. That's the biggest thing for us and for any hard money lender. We want to see you successful as a client, as a borrower, so the equity is the most important piece. But there's some other qualifications, and I think you're going to talk a little bit more about that also. Foreclosure bailout, this is something that we're not seeing in the hard money lending business really at all. It used to be where you could borrow as an owner-occupied or an owner-occupant, borrow hard money. So it would work out really well if you got yourself into some trouble. Maybe you had a job loss from a two-income family. Maybe the husband or the wife lost a job, and there wasn't enough money to keep up with all the bills. You know, the mortgage payment's usually the last to go, but if you start defaulting on the mortgage payment, you've clearly wrecked your credit because you've missed your credit card payments, you've missed your auto loan payments, and then you might find yourself another job. Maybe it's even a higher paying job and you can afford to keep the house. But the problem was that it wasn't so easy to work with the banks when you get into the foreclosure. Really, you had a couple of options: either bring it current, pay it off, or lose the house. Those are really your three options. We didn't have the modifications and the payment plans we do today. So these people would go out and borrow hard money, and they would pay off the lender that was foreclosing, use the hard money for 2 years or 3 years, use that to reestablish their credit, and then refinance out of the hard money. So it was an expensive way to go, but it was definitely a way to save the property. So that's what we meant when we put that slide together and what we were talking about with the foreclosure bailout.
Yeah, exactly. And it might seem counterintuitive because generally speaking, hard money is expensive. And usually it's a lot more expensive than a conventional loan. So why would I want to refinance out of a conventional loan at a 4, 5, 6, 8% interest rate into a hard money loan, which might be at 8, 10, 12, 15 to 18% interest rate. But depending on your situation, it might make sense. And we're going to go through some things, not specifically about this foreclosure bailout, but where it might make sense to be paying interest rates that high. So like I mentioned earlier, it was used based on an as-is value. Today, especially with what Pine Financial does, we lend based on the after repair value, the ARV. You're going to hear me talking about that a lot tonight. And then very often hard money is used in the commercial space. So any commercial investors out there are probably familiar with what hard money is. Now, if you were to go to your next door neighbor and say, hey, what kind of loan did you get on this? Did you use a hard money loan? They're probably going to have no idea what you're talking about. But if you go to just about any commercial investor and say, hey, did you use a hard money loan to buy this investment? They may or may not have, but they will most likely know what hard money is. Hard money is very often used in commercial real estate, but Pine Financial doesn't really play in the commercial world. We like to stay in the residential world. If you have a screaming deal in the commercial world you want help on, give us a shout. But most of what we do, our bread and butter all day, every day, is fix and flips within the residential world. So that being said, I kind of alluded to it a little bit. What would you pay for hard money? So if you guys want to jump in, throw any chats, questions, this is a great time to do it. But in the meantime, I'll throw it over to Kevin. Kevin, what do you think you should pay for hard money?
I think you should pay as much as possible.
As much as possible.
Yeah, as long as you're borrowing from Pine Financial. I'm only kidding. I'm seeing rates throughout Colorado, Minnesota, and even in DC. They're all pretty similar, and I'm seeing anywhere from 3 to 5 points in origination is common. A point, if you don't know, is a percent of the loan amount and a fee. So if I say I'm going to charge you 1 point on a $100,000 loan, we're looking at a $1,000 fee. So you tell me if you're seeing something different, Justin, but I'm seeing 3 to 5 points and anywhere from 12 to 18% interest rate.
Yeah, I totally agree. Sometimes people will find something cheaper than that. Generally what they're finding, though, is private money. And there's definitely a distinction between private money and hard money. Tonight we're obviously focusing on the hard money side, but private money is usually just that. It's a private individual. You know, if you have a family member, a friend who's done well, a friend of a friend or something like that, and they're willing to lend their money, sometimes they will lend it a little bit cheaper, but not much. You're not going to be getting this money for free. It's still, you know, the lowest I think I've heard was 2 and 10. But every now and then it just depends on how savvy you are and how well you can negotiate, and you know, maybe even how experienced you are on what you can get. But generally when you're talking to hard money lenders, it's not really up for discussion. You're not really going to be able to negotiate with your hard money lender. Like Kevin was saying, Pine Financial has closed almost 1,000 deals. So there's certainly a track record behind us saying that we know what we're doing and that people are certainly willing to pay what we want to charge. But we're going to talk about a lot of that here in the next couple of slides. So when we're talking hard money is a very, very small niche within the lending world of real estate. And to niche it down even more, this is where Pine Financial is in the rehab lenders world. So a rehab lender would be someone who only provides loans to non-owner occupied properties and only loans on properties that need rehab, right? It's in the name. So when you look at a rehab lender, the property needs repair. When I'm talking about the value we lend on, the ARV or after repair value, it's in the name. It's the after repair value. So it implies that you're going to be doing some work to the house and that it needs rehab. So many times you'll find that these rehab lenders will need to close in the name of an entity. So that means you can't buy it in your personal name. Justin Cooper can't go out and buy a house and take title in his personal name. I may have to have an LLC or a corporation or something like that I own that will go out and buy the property. So Kevin, what do you think? Why would you have to buy in the name of an entity?
Yeah, and I think we brushed over this fairly quickly over that last slide, so let's come back to that. So whenever you borrow money from a bank or anybody else, your loan's going to fall into one or two buckets, right? It's either going to be a consumer loan or it's going to be a business purpose loan. So when we say commercial only, that's not necessarily, it could be, but it's not necessarily what property is being used as collateral. It's more what the loan is going to be used for. So a commercial use or a business use is when you're borrowing money to make money, and that puts you into the commercial bucket. If you're using it to buy a car or a credit card or student loans or to buy a primary home, that's all going to go into the consumer bucket. The rules are very different between the consumer and the commercial. So hard money lenders typically want to stay in the commercial bucket because it's easier to foreclose. There's less laws. You could charge more. And then in some markets like DC, for example, we're pretty much forced into the commercial bucket. We can't do, by law, we can't do the consumer loans. And it's similar in Minnesota, a lot of regulation out there as well, where it just doesn't make it worth it to do those consumer loans. So when we say you might have to have an entity to borrow money, really what we're saying is you have to be in that commercial bucket, and this is going to make it extremely clear if it's not required like you might see in DC.
Yeah, exactly. Kevin brings up a really good point. There's a huge difference between consumer and commercial. So when I was talking about the commercial use, I was referring just to the type of real estate that's being financed. But Kevin brings up a great point about what your intent is and what the lender's intent with the loan is. So that being said, many times you need to close in the name of an entity. And why would a lender make you do that? uh, Once you realize it, it's pretty obvious. Nothing will say that this is a business loan better than making a loan to a business, to an LLC, to a corporation, right? So in DC, just like Kevin had said, we have to make the loan to an entity because that's what the laws out there dictate. Now in Colorado and Minnesota, we might be able to do it in either or, in your personal name or in your entity. So and getting into entities, that's probably a webinar we'll have down the road as well, talking about asset protection and should you use it and what kind and all that good stuff. But we'll save that one for another day. So when would you use hard money, and why would anyone pay those hard money rates? Well, let's start by looking at this house. As you guys can see, if you look really closely at this thing, the roof looks really bad. The windows, half of them are missing. The foundation looks like it's crumbling. There's a hole on the right-hand side. The porch looks like it's just a couple boulders really holding it up. And you can't really see the front door, but I don't think the front door really matters because you could easily go through the open wall on the side of the house. So basically what this house is implying is that it needs some work, right? If you're trying to get a regular conventional loan, they may have rules around how much work a house may need. If it needs any work, maybe you will only be able to get the loan. So if you're trying to buy a property and it needs work, hard money might make a lot of sense. What if you need to close fast? How long does a typical conventional lender need to close? 30 days? 45 days maybe, depending on the loan? Hard money likes to move really, really fast. At Pine Financial, 2 weeks is really comfortable for us. We're running about 3 weeks, depending on the appraiser we're using out in DC. But for the right client, for the right deal, we've closed as fast as 24 hours. And that's really one of the big powers of hard money. We can close much faster than conventional loans. And what we're going to be talking about today, specifically with how Pine Financial does their loans, you're going to need less cash into the deals. And this is what one of the big reasons we're going to go through those case studies is actually going through and running all the numbers on these deals and talking about the individual deals to show you how little cash actually went into these deals. And if you only have so much, if you only have $10,000, if you only have $50,000, even if you have $300,000, which sounds like a lot of cash, and you might be able to do a full purchase all in cash, if you don't put all of that money into one deal, what can you then do? You can do multiple deals. So really what we're talking about here is the power of leverage. Kevin is a huge fan of leverage. So what we're looking at here, let's dive into a case study, and let's just start really looking at what I'm talking about here. When I'm talking about leverage, when I'm talking about using less money in a deal. So this one's on Hooker Street in Colorado. And if you look closely, I don't know if you can really see it, but this is actually a duplex. And I chose this one on purpose because, well, one, it's a really good deal, and the client made a lot of money on it, but it also helps illustrate some things that you'll want to be asking your hard money lender, or that I'm going to tell you if you want to use Pine Financial, what our rules are on it. But what they did on this property was they actually bought the entire building. So this duplex was already split out, so there's one unit on the left and one unit on the right. So there's 2 units, a duplex. And what they did was they bought the entire building. And that's really important because Pine Financial will not lend on a half a duplex. We don't lend on condos. We don't lend on townhomes. There's a lot of extra moving parts that are just a little bit beyond our control, your control as the investor, how much diligence we can do. So what we want to do is we won't lend on just a half a duplex, right? Or if you're buying a triplex or one of the units in a triplex or something like that, we're not going to do that. You'd have to buy the whole building. So if you look at the picture, on the roof here is a flat roof, and it's a very shared roof. So if you just buy one side, but there's a roof leak, you're going to have to be talking to the neighbor, who's going to contribute money, or you're going to have to pay for the entire new roof where really you only benefit from half of it. So there's a lot of moving parts on a duplex or a triplex, fourplex, things like that, that might affect you as an investor. Now in DC, and I'm going to talk about this on the next example, row homes are everywhere. And row homes are slightly different from townhomes. And on the next example, I'm going to go into some of those differences. But let's focus on this one. Let's get into some of the numbers here. The sold price, $163,000. Now, what I'm talking about there is the after repair value, the ARV. This property sold when it was all fixed up and beautiful for $163,000. Not the whole building, but just half of it. And remember, I said the investor bought the whole building, so they had both sides. So really, when we're looking at this example, just remember in the back of your head that this investor basically doubled all these numbers. So sold price of $163,000, the after repair value. Their purchase price, $60,000. I don't know about you, but right there, that gets me pretty excited. A $100,000 spread, that's huge. That's a great starting place. That's going to get me in the car. I'm going to go out and look at that property and see what's going on. There's a lot of other numbers out there, right? So what are they? Closing costs, $5,000. You just bought a $60,000 property, but you had $5,000 in closing costs. Kevin, why would someone have closing costs that high? I'm assuming that's high. What do you think? Is $5,000 high for a $60,000 purchase?
I don't think so, and I'm sorry, just I'm getting a couple of questions coming in here, Justin. I just want to make sure that we're getting to these. It looks like they're all somewhat similar. They want you to speak up just a tad. So I don't know if you can get your mic a little bit closer. Okay, so the question to me was, why are the closing costs what they are? So in this specific case, they used hard money. In fact, they borrowed from us, which is why we're so intimate with the numbers and we know exactly what they are, rounded a little bit, as you could see. But they borrowed from us, and we charge on our first deal with someone 4 points, 15% interest, and then there's some other flat fees that you're going to get no matter who you borrow from. You're going to have recording fees. You're going to have maybe some transfer taxes depending on where you are. There's the lady or the gentleman with the stamp at the closing table and needs to charge you for the little stamp that they do, and all of that gets paid at closing when you buy a house. So I think that's what you were looking for when you asked me that question.
Well, it was kind of two reasons. Yeah, well, first off, what are the closing costs? But then also on a $60,000 purchase, the costs are so much higher because you're using a hard money loan, right? And this is where the points that Kevin was talking about earlier, a point is, again, what we charge in origination, basically what we charge to make the loan, and 1 point is 1% of the loan amount. So Pine Financial charges, we charge 4 points. So that is probably one of the biggest closing costs that you'll have in there. So yeah, so when you're comparing this to a regular purchase, if you're buying, say, a condo for 60 grand, closing costs on this example are probably going to be much higher because you're using a hard money loan, or in this case, the investor used a hard money loan. Repairs, $21,000. Now again, this is just a small little half duplex, so $21,000. What do you think they did for $21,000 on this thing? Well, it turned out on this property, it was actually a 1-bed, 1-bath on each side of the duplex. So what they did was they actually got in there and they did some extra framing. They framed out a second bedroom, so of course there's all the extra costs with that, the framing, the drywall, the electrical, the this and that, the other thing, right? So $21,000 per side to now make these things a 2-bed, 1-bath. Now generally bedrooms don't affect value too much because the value is more in the square footage, not in the bedroom count. But in this case, when you go from a 1-bedroom to a 2-bedroom, there's going to be a significant increase. So that was definitely one of the factors that led to such a big jump between your purchase of 60 and your sold of 163. Holding costs, $7,700. So what am I talking about on holding costs? This is the other side of the hard money, right? Anytime you talk to a hard money lender and you ask them what they charge, which is inevitably the very first question you ask, but it's probably one of the last things that you should be worrying about, we're talking about what do you charge in points and what is your interest rate. So I just told you Pine Financial charges 4 points, and the interest rate we charge is 15%. So it's interest only, and there are monthly payments. So the $7,700 is those monthly payments. Concessions, $500. Concessions refers to how much money we gave back to the buyer, whether it be closing cost assistance, helping them, throwing them some money to help them buy it. Maybe it was on the inspection. They came back and said, hey, the doorknobs were installed backwards. I want that fixed. And you say, here's $500. You can take care of it yourself. Concessions are what we're going to give to the buyer. In this case, it was $500. The selling fees, what am I referring to there? The big one, of course, is the real estate agents. Real estate agents definitely work for their money, or at least it looks like they do, right? $9,500 and that counts for both the buyers and the sellers agents. So if you look at these dashes here are not just placeholders, these are actually subtraction marks, okay? Because we're doing some math here. We start with that sold price of 163, we back out all of these costs, and it comes to what? A profit of 59,300. So I know you're all sitting at home and you're on your computers, so I know you all have calculators there. So definitely, as we're going through this, feel free and double check any of our math. Make sure we're doing it right. But remember, on this one, this was only for half the duplex. He did both of these, and the numbers were basically the same because you don't get more identical to an attached half of a duplex. So on one of these deals, he profited $60,000 for the whole building, $120,000. Not a bad deal, is it, Kevin?
No, not at all. I'd do that one.
Absolutely. So let's jump over here. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the HUD settlement statement, or maybe you're not. Maybe it's just one of those massive pieces of paper that you sign at closing when you're buying and you're selling. But I highly recommend you take a look at the HUD-1 settlement statement. Specifically, on the lower right-hand side, you're going to see this little box, line 603, cash to the seller. Now, in this case, well, it could also say cash from seller. Nobody wants to do that. Remember, I've lost money. I've had that other box checked, and it was miserable. In this case, cash to the seller, $66,000, $66,102.56. But I told you that the profit was $59,000. So where is that difference? Well, in this case, they got a check for $66,000, but his true profit was only $59,000 because the holding costs were paid out of pocket monthly. Okay, so there's a little bit of a difference there. The profit, his true profit, was $59,000, and I really want to make sure you all see that. Just because you get a check for $66,000 doesn't necessarily mean that that's your true profit. Although walking away from closing with a check for $66,000 is pretty powerful and feels pretty darn good. So let's dive a little deeper onto these numbers. Acquisition costs, $86,000. What am I talking about there? I'm talking about your purchase price, your repairs, and your closing costs. Right? So what did we have here? We had $60,000 purchase, $5,000 in closing, and $21,000 in repairs. Okay? $86,000. The loan was for $85,500. So I really want to take a second here and make sure you guys soak in these numbers here. You needed to buy it and fix it up $86,000, and you got a loan for $85,500. So the total money that this investor brought to closing was $500. That's really, really powerful. Let's dive a little deeper. Cash into the deal, $8,200. The $500 cash to close, and the $7,700 in holding. So total to buy it and to hold it, $8,200.
You know what's funny about this, Justin, is you said the $500 to closing. He actually had a $1,000 earnest money check submitted with this deal, so he got a check for $500 at closing.
So he bought a house and walked away from buying the house.
Half his earnest money came back to him.
That's incredibly powerful. Incredibly powerful. And that's what we're talking about here when it comes to leverage. So we've got $8,200 out of pocket. We made $59,000. So what I always like to look at is what is the cash-on-cash return on investment, your ROI, and specifically your cash-on-cash. Because when we're talking about leverage and we're talking about less cash into the deal, understanding my cash-on-cash return is really the most powerful thing. So we had $59,000 in profit coming back to us. We had $8,000 going out, 723% return. I really want you guys to double check and make sure that that is an accurate number there. I've triple checked it. Kevin even double checked it before we got on this webinar. That is a real number, 723% return. Kevin, do you remember how long it actually took him to do that?
I was just going to say, Justin, I think that took him 6 months, so why don't you double that for an annual return?
Exactly.
We have a couple of questions coming in. Do you want me to
double it again because this was only on half
That's right.
the duplex.
That's right. But the return would still be the same, right? Double the profit, but the return would be the same.
He still had $8,000 out of pocket. All right, you got me on that one. Yeah, what kind of questions?
All right, I think some of them we're going to get to later, but I just wanted to make sure that to Steve and Barb and some of these other people that are asking questions that you know that I am seeing them and we are going to get to them. But they're asking some questions about the interest rate, and how it compounds and what happens if I default and that kind of stuff. Do you want when going over the loan terms and all that, should we just wait until we get to that slide, or would you prefer to start answering some of these as we go?
Yeah, we can certainly start working them in. I was trying to answer a lot of these as we went. When I started talking about how much we can loan and start talking about the interest rate and stuff, I'm trying to hit them as we go, but these are great questions. I think one that's really important that we definitely need to talk about right now is the loan amount. How did we come up with that $85,500? So what we do is we will lend up to 70% of the after repair value. Remember how I said we're going to be talking about that ARV quite a bit? This is why it's so important. We will lend up to 70% of the after repair value. And ideally, what we're going to do is cover 100% of your costs. And in this case, we were pretty darn close. So we want to cover all the purchase price, all the repairs, even all the closing costs if we can, so that it can potentially be a true no money down deal.
Okay, so the question I think we need to answer now, because it just came in and it's very relevant to this specific deal, from Jonathan. He's asking, how do we come up with the loan amount, because it isn't the 70% of the value. And so I'm going to go ahead and take this one, Justin, because this was a deal that I was pretty heavily involved in when we funded it. We missed our ARV when we got our appraisal, and the reason for that is this is a 2-bedroom neighborhood, and I think Justin mentioned this briefly. It was a 2-bedroom neighborhood, and this was a one-bedroom unit. So we didn't know what the discount for that one unit would be, and we didn't believe that he can get 2 bedrooms in that little place. So we valued it as a 1-bedroom, and we didn't know how steep of an adjustment to make because there's no other 1-bedroom comps in the neighborhood. So we were more conservative, and we made apparently a pretty darn aggressive adjustment for that bedroom value. So our ARV was significantly lower than what he actually got for the property. So we used, so had we known what that 1-bedroom, first of all, that he could have even accomplished that, and 2, what the value increase would have been, then we would have loaned him 100% of the deal. It wouldn't have been a $500 out-of-pocket. It would have been a no out-of-pocket deal.
Yeah, and that's a really good point on this one. And it's an interesting one because we really don't want our clients to be changing the scope of work, because everything we do is based on that scope of work. And we use that scope of work intimately to track the draws, track the repairs, track the progress of the property, and of course to help us determine that after repair value. But in this case, he actually added more value to the property. So when you make a decision like that in the middle of the game, that of course is going to be no problem when you're adding more value. So that's a great question. Thank you for asking that one.
And there's several people that I'm actually responding to, real simple, easy questions that I think aren't relevant to everybody, and I'm just going to respond to them as we go. And I want you to know that it says Missy is responding to you, but it's actually me that's making those responses. So if you get a response and it's not good enough, ask again. I'll share it with the entire group. Otherwise, I'll just continue to answer these as we go.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Well, let's jump down onto this next one. Now, this one is one of those row homes on Longfellow. And this one, I think, is pretty obvious why it's different from that duplex, or that half a duplex that we just talked about in the last example. First off, the color, right? The unit is painted a different color than the 2 that it's attached to. The front porch, the awning, is very independent from the other ones. The trim over the second-story windows is different. And if you look up where the roof will be, you can see that it's probably on a hill or something like that, and that each roof is going to be separate and independent. So when you first bring a deal to us and you're looking at it, and the question is it a townhome, is it a row home, is there enough distinction between the two? This one makes it look beyond obvious that yes, this is an independent property. This one sold for $570,000. Now, in today's market, regardless of which market you're in, just today, $570,000 sounds a lot more realistic than that $160,000, right? And it's a little bit the nature of the DC market, but I think it's also just the nature of what's going on in the real estate market across the country, where we've been rebounding, coming back. In Denver in particular, we've already surpassed the highs before the big crash. So $570,000 as a sold price, as an after repair value, I think is very realistic. Purchase price, $355,000. Now again, that $100,000 spread on that half duplex got me excited, but a $200,000 spread gets me a little bit more excited. Now, of course, the price point is much higher, but it's a $200,000 spread, over $200,000. There's a lot of things we can do with that kind of spread. Biggest one I'm thinking of is making money. Closing costs, $19,000. So why would they be so much higher than that first example? Well, a lot of the closing costs are percentages. They're all based on the purchase price of the property. In this case, the purchase price of $355,000 is way higher than $60,000 on the last one. So that alone means the closing costs are going to be much higher. Repairs, $40,000. Now, Kevin, what do you think they did on this property for $40,000?
Gosh, I don't know. This is one that you worked on. I would assume that they probably that's mostly a cosmetic remodel, so it's going to be a lot of cabinets, counters, paint, carpet, flooring, that kind of thing.
That's exactly what it was. So it's very much just cosmetic. One of the great things about these row homes is you're attached, so there's less windows to have to repair. There's less exterior that needs to be improved. There's less landscaping that needs to be improved. So generally, a lot of these are cosmetic deals, and specifically with a $40,000 budget on an ARV of 570, it was probably a small repair, because in order to really justify a $200,000 jump, we really have to make the inside look pretty good. So I think when they were starting off on this project, it was already at a really solid baseline, and that $40,000 was really just cosmetic to really make it pop. Cabinets, countertops, bathrooms, paint, carpet, that type of stuff. So it wasn't, they weren't really moving walls and adding bedrooms and stuff like that, but they were still touching every single surface and really making this thing shine. Holding costs, $25,000. Again, this goes back to what are your monthly bills? The biggest one is going to be that interest payment. But of course, there's paying for the water, paying for the electric. As we start heading into the fall and the winter, there's going to be the heating bills, because contractors, for whatever reason, they love to work in shorts and t-shirts, even in the dead of winter. Concessions, $5,000. So again, when you're selling, you're probably going to be up against giving some money back to the buyers. In this case, $5,000. Selling fees, $35,000. Again, that's the real estate agent. So on this one, if you kept up with the math, $90,000 profit. Not too shabby. A lot of risk in playing in those price points, but also a lot of profit to be made. But what does that really look like? Let's dive deeper into this deal. Acquisition cost, $414. The purchase, repairs, and closing costs. Loan of $399. Okay, that should be 70% of that 570 after repair value. Okay, so what does this mean? How much out of pocket on this one? Well, the difference between the acquisition and the loan, $15,000. And then we had the $25,000 in holding costs. So total of $40,000. So still a good chunk of change out of pocket. But when you make $90,000 in profit and you have $40,000 out of pocket, we're talking a 226% return on investment. Not shabby at all. Kevin, how are we doing on questions?
I think we got a few that we could answer, and I know we're down to about 20 minutes before we have to be done. So I definitely want to get into the rental properties, but let's go through a couple of these questions real quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of them is your interest rate 15% compounded monthly for calculation? You want to answer that? You want me to?
Yeah, go for it, Kevin.
Okay, so all hard money that I've ever seen is all simple interest. They don't have an amortizing type of loan product. So when you say compounding typically means when you're investing money and then the interest earns on the interest. So in a loan, when you're paying some interest, some principal, it's called amortization or amortization schedule. I think that's what you're asking here, and this is not on an amortization schedule, so you're going to be paying interest-only payments, and then the last payment that comes in will be for the full principal plus any accrued interest. So to calculate your monthly payment, since it's simple interest, you take the loan amount and you multiply it by the rate, which in this case is 15%, and then you divide that by 12, so you get a monthly payment. Another question came in is, when can I refinance? Which I'm going to leave that one alone because you're going to talk about that in this very next case study.
Yep.
What happens worst case scenario if I default? Worst case scenario if you default is we're going to take the house. Now, obviously, we don't want to do that. We're going to try to work with you to be successful. If you're successful, we are successful. I truly believe that. I think you'll come back and borrow from us over and over. In fact, we just had a client this week, literally 2 days ago, send me an email with $1 million check on a project that we financed for him, and he made over $1 million on it. And he's got the funds now, but my guess is he's going to plow that into a rental of some type. He's real big into commercial. He's going to plow that into another income-producing property, and he's going to come back and borrow from us again. So we do want you to be successful, but I can't lie to you. The worst case is I'm going to take the house. What else here? Go over the scope of work. This is a good one, Justin. I think I'm going to leave this one to you, unless you want me to take it, but I'll read it to you and you tell me what you think. Can you please go over the scope of work and what you want to see in an ARV property?
Yeah, that's a great question and actually incredibly important. We've got a spreadsheet that we use that does a couple things. One, it'll tell us what you're going to do to the property. It includes a little executive summary. So diving more into just one line that says cabinets, the executive summary will give you a chance to actually say what kind of cabinet and the style and that type of stuff. And then also the part of the spreadsheet that we use is broken out for the draws, because we don't just give you that full 40,000 in repairs lump sum and pat you on the back and say good luck. We're going to be part of the process, making sure the work actually gets done. But when it comes to what I want to see, the more detailed, the better, because our draws are all based on a percentage of completion. So the only way we'll know what percent of completion we're at is to know what's actually been done. So the more detail that's in there, the easier it is for us to check things off and say, whether or not we're ready for a draw. That being said, I certainly don't want it down to every nut, bolt, screw, sheet of drywall. We actually went through the scope of work and added some sample items in there. So, for example, on the kitchen, there's going to be the cabinets, the countertops, the backsplash, the lighting, the flooring, the paint, and appliances. Those are probably the highlights. And there's probably, and similar in other rooms. So it doesn't have to be down to every last little detail. When it comes to tile, I just want to know that it's done, and I can actually walk through the house and stand on the tile. That's how I know it's complete. So you don't have to put in, the hardy backer and the grout and the tile and all this other stuff. But that's a good question. And if you want a copy of that scope of work spreadsheet, it's a really simple Excel spreadsheet, but feel free and email either of us. It's justin@pinefinancialgroup.com or kevin@pinefinancialgroup.com. And we're going to have that again. On the last slide, we'll have our contact info as well. So, Kevin, any other good ones right now?
Yeah, I got another one that I'm going to go ahead and take, but in the meantime, we got one to ask you to go back one slide for, I guess, take some more notes. So let's do that for him. Oops, I just deleted one. I am so sorry about that, whoever that was. But if I don't answer your question, ask it again, because I just deleted the wrong one. My mistake. See, first webinar, right, Justin?
There's going to be a learning curve, right?
I'm so sorry.
Well, as you're waiting for that to get back,
I got one that they're calling you out, so maybe we can address this later, but I want to at least mention it because it's very, very observant. He says that you should never go over an 80% ARV, your purchase and repairs over 80, and he thinks that the DC example does go over 80 and still turned out profitable, which is against what we typically would teach. So that's good, Jonathan. I think we're going to have to look at that and get back to him, but obviously it was profitable. We used it in this deal, so let's take a look at that and get back to him.
Yeah, just real quickly though, that's a really great point. So when we are looking at a deal and analyzing a deal, the first thing we look at is it going to be a no money down deal? Can we fit all your purchase, repairs, and closing costs into that 70% of after repair value? If so, it's basically going to be a no-brainer. There's some things outside of the deal that we look at. We look at credit, we look at income, we look at how liquid you are, your reserves, checking and savings accounts. But basically, if it's a no money down deal, it's going to be a good deal. When it's not a no money down deal, then we start looking at it and say, okay, well, what are the numbers? And we're going to really look at it and see if it's going to be profitable. So usually between 70 and 75% of after repair value, your costs, your purchase and repairs, if it's between 70 and 75, you're probably still going to make money, even though you're paying the hard money costs. Once we get over 75, we're probably going to have a pretty serious conversation about, is this deal going to be profitable? Because when you add in the holding costs and the hard money costs, as well as all the unknowns when it comes to your scope of work and repairing a property, they can add up really quickly. And the contractor still needs to get paid, and the real estate agent still need to get paid. Everybody still needs to get paid except for the investor. Their profit is the only thing that really shrinks when you start getting over that. So that's a really good point. We'll definitely have to go back and look at those numbers about where they shook out compared to the ARV. But in this case, what we did, if we had done that, we went through and said, okay, well, you still stand to make $90,000 based on these numbers. So even if we're over that 70%, however far we are, I still see you making money. Are you comfortable with the risk of being over 70%? I'm comfortable if you're comfortable after the conversation we have. So yeah, in that case, let's move forward on the deal.
Okay, so let's move on to the next slides. We have about 100 people with us today, Justin, and I'm starting to get a lot of questions in. So we're going to do the best that we can to answer everybody's question, but we're somewhat limited on time, which is awesome because now we get to come back next month and we could go through some different parts of hard money lending and maybe go over and answer even more of these questions. But Justin, since we're down to a little bit less than 15 minutes now, if you want to go ahead and plow through the next couple case studies, and then we'll try to answer the questions at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I've actually got three more case studies, but they're all relatively similar, right? Similar to how we ran the numbers on the first ones. But what I want to do now is not talk about a fix and flip, which is what those previous two were. I want to jump over and show you that you can actually use hard money for rental properties. And this is a topic that we've actually done 2-hour classes on, how to do these rentals, buy them with hard money, and then ultimately you're going to be refinancing. And I think somebody had actually already had a question about that. But real quick, what does the process look like if you're going to buy a rental property? Well, of course, you have to locate the property, use your real estate agent for that, get it under contract, make an offer, and then once it's under contract, you really want to be diving into that scope of work, that repair budget, and you really want to be running the numbers, just like I just talked about. Where does it fall on that 70% rule, the MAO, or just in relation to your hard money loan? All right, number 3, get the hard money acquisition loan. This is where you actually buy the property using the hard money, just like we were talking about in those previous examples. Now you own it, you want to get in there, do the repairs on the property, get a tenant, and then here's the big key on the rentals is you refinance. Our loans are incredibly short term. In Colorado and in Minnesota, they're 9 months long. And in DC, they're actually 6 months long. So time is incredibly important. Speed is of the essence. You really want to get in and get out. And this is how we can do that. We would refinance the hard money loan. And I'm not going to dive into that because, like I said, we spent a whole 2 hours on that. And we'll probably do another webinar just on that. But the key here is to refinance out. Once you do that, now you're off to the races. You hire a property management company or maybe even manage it yourself and really start collecting that cash flow. So what does that look like? Here's a case study. This is on Logan Street here in Colorado. You notice there's at least 2 doors that you can see. This one's actually a triplex. There's another one, I think, around back. And clearly a distressed property. Purchase price, $78,000. Repairs, $21,000. Now, it's a triplex, right? So you've got 3 kitchens, at least 3 bathrooms. Closing costs, $5,800. Acquisition, purchase, repairs, and closing costs now come to $104,800. The value, this is that after repair value. The value is $150,000. So it's going to take $104 to buy it and fix it, and it's going to be worth $150 after that. Because the value is $150, 70% of that is $105,000. So if your acquisition is $104 and you can borrow $105, there's no money out of pocket. So this person just bought a triplex with no money out of pocket. Refinance. This is the key. After they buy it and fix it all up, they're going to go and refinance it. Okay, $3,000 to go back in and sign all that paperwork on the refinance. The new loan is $108,000. So how did they come up with this? Well, basically, they took that $105,000 hard money, and what they were able to do is roll in the cost of that refinance, that extra $3,000 on top of the payoff, and now the refinance loan is $108,000. So there's a lot of keys on this, and we'll dive into it on that next class when we talk about these rentals. But basically what this refinance can do is they will lend up to 75% of that new appraised value. Now, it's not a cash-out refinance. You're not going to walk away with any extra money, but what they can do is have enough money to pay off the hard money loan of $105 and roll in the cost of the refinance of $3,000. So if you had no money out of pocket when you bought it on the hard money side, no money out of pocket on the refinance, right? You have a rental property with no money out of pocket. Now here we are, the PITI, the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, your mortgage payments on a loan of $108,000. In this case was $680,000 or $680. It's getting late. Rent, $1,600. Okay. Gross cash flow. I'm not talking about vacancies and maintenance and property management. Just the gross cash flow, $970. I think there's enough room in that one to roll in any of those other things. Plus, you're not going to really have any maintenance, at least for a little bit, because you just spent a whole bunch of money fixing this property up. So quick note, there are 2 hard money payments made before fully occupied. And why is it important to make that note that it's fully occupied? Because now you have tenants in there paying $1,650 a month. And in this case, if you pencil out the math, that's enough to cover the hard money payments. Okay? So even before you refinance it and get into that PIT of 680, once it's occupied, you're actually still covering all your hard money costs and your cash flow. So let's dive deeper here. Let's look at that return on investment. $970 a month times 12 months, you're going to be bringing in $11,640 a year. Cash into the deal, 0 money up front when you bought it, and 0 when you refinanced it. And then the 2 payments came to that $2,600. So if we look at what we're going to make in the first year versus how much we have into it, a 443% return on investment. That's awesome. That's incredible. When you're talking about rental properties, right, what are we comparing our investment to? Generally, it's comparing to how the stock market's doing. And I don't know anybody who's gotten anywhere near a 443% return.
Yeah, just jump in here on this too, because I am so passionate about rental properties, Justin, and people doing this. 90% or more of our clients are fix and flippers, which is great, and it's nice to get those $40,000 paychecks, but this is where it's at. This is where the wealth is created. This is what our clients should be doing. We're talking about a 443%, and no one's asked the question yet, but I know it's coming up. What about vacancies and maintenance? So we can go over that if you'd like. We should go over that. But we're not accounting for a lot of things here. We're not accounting for appreciation. We're not accounting for the tenants paying off our loan. We're not accounting for the tax benefits. And when you're talking about high leverage and a little bit of appreciation, which we are in a strong appreciating market right now, you're going to see 1,000, 2,000% return on your investment. I mean, in this specific case, it's almost infinite because it's a zero down deal. They've got $3,000 into it. But if that thing goes up in value $10,000 and you add another $10,000 profit to your formula here, now all of a sudden we're looking at almost 1,000% return on investment without the other benefits that I already mentioned. Why is more people not doing this?
It's a great question, Kevin. And I think it's such a small fraction of people who understand that you can use hard money to buy a rental property and use this strategy. So when I was in DC a couple of weeks ago, we actually had 130 people come out to the class I did. It was one of those 2-hour classes on this topic, and there was 130 people in the room, and I sat there in the back of the room when I was done talking for 45 minutes at least, talking to people who had individual questions in different situations. So few people understand that this is possible, so it's incredibly powerful. And like I said, we're going to come back and revisit this in the future and dive into this, the rental strategy in a lot more detail. But we're quickly running out of time, so let me power through a couple more. This one's in St. Paul, Minnesota. Purchase of 64, repairs of 20, closing costs of $5,000. So the acquisition, $89,500. The value, $125,000. The after repair value, $125,000. So the hard money loan was $87,500. Now, not a no money down, right? $2,000. The question here, of course, is how many people have actually bought a rental property and been able to fully repair it for only $2,000 out of pocket? Probably not many people. And that, again, is the power of this. So refinance, $2,800. So the new refinance loan, $90,300. Again, we're able to roll in that refinance cost because of how the refinances worked. PITI, $606. Rent, $1,100. So in this case, a gross cash flow of $494. So when I'm personally looking for rentals, one of my metrics that I look for is what is the gross cash flow, and I want it to be $500. Now this is a couple bucks less, but I would still be jumping on top of this. This is close enough for me. So it took 3 months to rehab, rent, and refinance. So in 3 months, they had bought it, fixed it, and they were out of their hard money loan. So total interest on the hard money loans, $3,281. Total money into the deal, $5,000. All right, what's the return on investment? $494 a month times 12 months. We're bringing in $5,900 a year. Cash into the deal, $5,200. So our return on investment is 112%. And what's really important there to illustrate, when you hit 100% return on investment, that means in year 1, I've recouped every dollar I had out of pocket. What's my return on year 2? It's infinite, because at that point, I don't have any more money out of pocket. I've already recouped it all.
Okay, let's, I'm getting this, like a countdown on my screen, so I don't know if we're going to get cut off after that or not. This is our first go at this, so I don't know what's going to happen in 3 minutes and 35 seconds. But can we skip this case study and go right to some of these questions? We're getting a
Yeah,
tremendous amount of questions about our product, our loan, what we could do to help our clients out. So maybe if we jump right up to that slide and you can quickly go over this, and then whatever questions it doesn't answer, then I'll try to address those.
absolutely, absolutely. So here's the highlights of what we've been talking about. Pine Financial will cover up to 70% of the after repair value. We'll do 70% loan to value of the after repair value. So again, when you're comparing, if for some crazy reason you need to compare us to anybody else, this is really important. What's the loan to value, and the loan to value of what? Ideally, we'll cover 100% of your costs, right? We want to cover everything we possibly can in that 70% loan to value. We do look at credit. We're not looking at your credit score. We're not getting super detailed, but I'm looking for major things. Is there a $2 million tax lien? That might be a red flag. You have $40,000 in judgments? That might be a red flag that we need to talk about. We want to see 6 months payment reserves. Now, what I'm talking about there is your liquidity, and this is the thing we rely most heavily on. I want to make sure you've got at least 6 months of payments. That's roughly 7.5% of the loan amount. And I want to make sure you're liquid, checking and savings accounts. Because what does anybody who's ever done a rehab know? You're going to go over budget. Something's going to change, right? So I want to make sure that once we lock in that deal and once we get you that repair amount of whatever it's going to be, 20, 50, even $100,000, we know something's going to change. And I want to make sure you have money liquid and available so that when it does change, you're able to keep the project moving. When we look at you personally, that's the thing we rely most heavily on. We do document income, so I'll probably ask for your most recent taxes or maybe a W-2 and a pay stub. Again, fast closings. 2 weeks is incredibly normal for us, and for the right client and right deal, we've done it as fast as 24 hours. We can move incredibly fast. Can close in the name of an entity if you want to, and of course in DC we have to. We charge 4 points, 15% interest, and I have there that it's a 6-month loan. In DC, it's a 6-month loan. In Colorado and Minnesota, it's a 9-month loan. So again, just kind of goes into some of the rules and stuff and what we're up against here. So those are the highlights of our loan. That's what we do all day, every day. We're constantly looking at deals. If you have something you want us to take a look at, we're obviously running out of time, and it's difficult to get super detailed and personal, but send us an email. Give us a call tomorrow in the office. Happy to help. I don't need a full big package that you put out, or that a wholesaler has put together. I just want to know 3 things. What's your purchase price? What's your repairs? And what's the after repair value? And based on that, we can basically go through all those details on the other stuff. Yeah. So real quick, we do have an app which helps you out with exactly that. You put in your purchase, your repairs, and your after repair value. It's a free app, incredibly powerful. I actually use it all day, every day while I'm on the phone with clients. So if you have that app on your phone, both on Apple devices or Android devices, it's incredibly powerful. So here it is, our last slide. It's my email address, but Kevin's is the same. Just substitute Kevin for Justin. The 303 number is our office right here where we're sitting in Denver, Colorado. Was kind of sunny today, but yeah, if you guys are in the area, you want to come out, we'd love to have you visit us. Winter's quickly approaching. If anybody skis, coming out. We've got the best skiing in the country right here. Kevin?
So it looks like it cut us off recording. I think everybody can still hear me. If somebody could actually maybe raise a hand, or some people, a lot of people raising their hand. Okay, cool. So I think you guys can still hear me. The recording is done now. I did want to say there's a ton of information on our blog. I'm getting a lot of questions that can be answered on our blog also. That's pinefinancialgroup.com, and just click on blog. But Justin and I, of course, will be happy to answer any questions. Do you want to stick around for 5 more minutes and try to answer some of these questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's try to get through some of these. There's a tremendous amount of them, though, so we're not going to get to everybody. But I know some of these were specific to me and my success. If you want to, I'm happy to answer those questions. If you want to email me directly, it's kevin@pinefinancialgroup.com. You'll have much better success emailing me than calling me for those types of questions.
And Kevin is usually a little too modest to mention it, but Kevin wrote an incredible book that kind of goes on to talk about how to be an investor and kind of what his path was. So if you're interested in that, I know Kevin's been working on revamping it. What is it? The website, 45-Day Investor, the 45-Day
Yeah, it's
Investor?
going to work. We're going to actually get it soon. We're going to be listed on Amazon. So when that comes out, I'll make sure that I get a link out there to the Amazon, and you guys can get a hard copy of that. So let's get, thank you, Justin, for that, by the way. Let's get into the questions here. So one of them is, this is a real good one I think is important for the people that are sticking around to know, which is actually almost everybody. You guys are awesome. So do you need a licensed contractor to do the work for you, or are you going to allow them to do some of the work themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, you don't have to have a licensed contractor do all the work. But what I do want is to have your scope of work and your budget reflect hiring a third-party contractor. So if you are a contractor yourself and you want to put in your sweat equity, or you're just super handy and you want to jump in and assist your contractor, that's totally fine. We just want to make sure the house gets repaired and the quality of construction is there to back up the after repair value that we're all basing the loan and the investment on. But what I want to make sure you have when it comes to the budget is dollars reflecting hiring a third person. Because worst case scenario, you want to be out there and swinging the hammer. In my mind, the pessimistic lender is worst case, you get hit by a bus and now you can't be swinging the hammer. So I want to make sure that we both have money there and available to pay a third party. Now what happens if you don't get hit by a bus and you are able to swing the hammer and complete the project? Well, we still have that budget and we still have those dollars set aside. So what we're going to do is release that full budget. I'm not worried about invoices and receipts and all that type of stuff when it comes to releasing funds. I want to make sure that the work is done. So if you have a $30,000 budget and you just get a great deal on cabinets and it actually comes in at $25,000, that's great. I'm still going to release all 30. If you say you got a $50,000 budget and you're in there swinging hammers and you get it done for $30,000, that's great. I'm still going to release $50,000.
All right, lots of questions on the app. How do I get the app?
Yeah, so the app is literally called Fix and Flip. So it could be spelled out A-N-D. It could be the ampersand over here, the little squiggly line that means end. It could be either or. I don't remember off the top of my head which one. And of course, whether you have an Apple or an Android, it's spelled out differently and you have to search different ways. So I don't know which one is which, but the button for the app looks just like that. It says Pine, it's got the pine tree, it's got the blue background, really easy on the eye. No, I'm just kidding, I don't even know who designed it. So try typing in Fix and Flip or Fix and Flip Calculator or Rehab Calculator. And you might even try just typing in Pine Financial Group when you're in the App Store. I believe for Apple devices, you're in the App Store, and then for Android, you're going to be in Google Play. You could just try typing in Pine Financial Group, and I know people have had success doing that. If you're having trouble and you just can't find it, feel free to shoot me an email. Again, it's justin@pinefinancialgroup.com. And I will send you a link that you can just open up in your email, click on it, and it should take you there. Like I said, I don't know where that is, but I've got it saved somewhere. I can send that over to you.
Okay, and on our website also, I think if you're on the right-hand side, you can get it that way.
Yeah,
so they want to know if you need a professional CMA. So this is going to be a question about how we come up with the ARV.
That's a great question. Do you have to have a professional CMA? No. Do I think it's a good idea? Yes. Should you waste time waiting for it? Probably not, because depending on who's actually doing the CMA, I mean, it could be as detailed as 5 really solid comps, or it could be 40 pages of every property that's for sale on the market, whether or not it's a good comp. Ultimately, what Pine Financial is going to do is we're going to order an appraisal on the property. And it's really important that we have your scope of work for that because we need to be telling the appraiser what you're going to be doing to the property. So we're going to order an appraisal, and it's going to be an as-repaired appraisal. Full interior, exterior, we got to get in there. They take lots of pictures. But ultimately, that's what the lending decision is going to be based on, is that after-repair appraisal. So if you have comps, great, send them over. If you have a CMA, great, send it over. The more information we can supply to the appraiser, the better, because we really want the appraiser to understand the quality of repair and what those finishes are going to be.
Okay, this is a good one too, Justin. The interest that we charge. This is going to be a little bit more complicated, but if you can go as quickly as you can. The interest that we charge, is it based on the loan amount or what we've advanced to the borrower, or how do they calculate the interest amount? Not the rate, but the amount that we're charging.
Yeah, so what is your monthly payment going to be? And it's based, so we charge 15%, it's interest only, and it is based on the loan amount. So whatever that 70% of after repair value, that's probably going to be our loan amount, and that's what it's calculated on. So if you're borrowing, or if the deal is 100,000 ARV, or the loan amount is going to be $100,000, I'm going to take 15% of that and then divide by 12, so it'll be $1,250.
Okay, and
Now,
qualify that with in Denver especially. We're starting to see more of it in Minnesota where we're doing some higher dollar amount and new construction. I know Justin doesn't like to talk about that because this is more of a advanced investor that we're looking for. We're not looking for a bunch of phone calls from people that have never done a deal before about this. But if we're doing a new construction project, an infill, let's say, how does the interest work on that one?
yeah, and this is something, if you're doing that, if you're a builder, if you've done new construction before and you're interested in using hard money for that, and we have a lot of clients doing those things, happy to chat with you guys a little bit more offline, and we can dive into more examples. But basically what we're going to do, when you buy the property, you've got to finish the architecturals, you've got to get the drawings, you've got to get the permits, and generally that's taking some time. So what we're going to do is, the loan may be 500,000, maybe 700,000. It may be $1 million loan, and we've done several of those. We're probably getting ready to close several just this month. But what we're going to do there, if you're just buying the property for 300,000, and because of the size of these deals, you may have $50,000 in closing costs. Well, that's really all the money that you need to be using right now. So what we're going to do at closing is lend you the 350,000, 300 purchase, 50 in closing costs, and that's all you're going to be paying interest on right away. And what we're going to do is we're going to work together hand in hand to come up with not just the scope of work, but a detailed draw schedule. We handle the draws very differently than we do on fix and flips. It's more based on the milestones. So when you get the demo done, the foundation, the framing, the drying in, the rough-ins, all those big major milestones of the project, that's what we're going to base the draws on. So we're going to work together and come up with a schedule, not just for what those milestones are and when, but also how much those are going to be. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come up with dates for those things. And then on those dates, we're going to advance the loan. So say the demolition and foundation is going to cost you $50,000. Well, you bought it for 30, you got 50 in closing costs. And now when you're at that point for the foundation, we're going to advance another 50. So now you start paying on the $400,000. And obviously it would progress through that for the remainder of the project. So again, a lot of information, a lot of detailed stuff. It usually works really well if you have an actual project and some numbers, either in the past that we can work on or something currently, to actually put pencil to paper and work through what those numbers and when and how that all works. But that's what we do on that. Like Kevin said, that's a much more advanced strategy for the new construction. We don't do those for the fix and flips.
I think we're going to have to finish up. That's a great answer, Justin. This is actually really cool. I don't know if anyone else noticed this, but it looks like some of our attendees are answering their own question. I mean, attendees are answering other attendees' questions as I'm trying to get to all of these. So that's really cool for those of you that are doing that. Thank you. All right, is there a minimum, just a couple more, and then we're going to have to call it quits, but is there a minimum, keep it short, a minimum ROI that you're looking for?
So there's not necessarily a minimum ROI that I'm looking for. I want to make sure that my client is smart in their approach. Well, going back to the, what are your costs versus the ARV? And, are we over 70%? Are we over 75? Are we over 80%? That's going to be the first big red flag. But depending on the size of the deal, you still may be making some dollars. So it's another way to approach it is what are the actual profit dollars. So most fix and flippers want to see a minimum of $20,000, $25,000 depending on the size of the deal. But some people have their reasons and they're okay with $10,000 in profit. So generally once I see a deal where the profit dollars are going to be $15,000 or less, I'll go back and have that serious conversation with them and make sure they understand how I'm running the numbers and why I think they're only going to make $15,000 and why I think that's risky. Because one little price drop and you can lose $5,000, $10,000 of that profit. You go over budget, and that could easily be $5,000, $10,000. You do both of those, and all of a sudden, all that profit is gone in an instant. So there's a lot of risk when you start looking at that. I like to see $20,000, $25,000 at a minimum. And of course, it depends on the deal. If you're doing that new construction project where you're borrowing $1 million, $25,000 could disappear in a blink of an eye on a project like that. So on those, people are usually looking for profit dollars much higher.
Okay, good. So let's take, they're still coming in, man. So let's do, this is a good one. If you borrow under an LLC and you want to keep it as a rental property, let's just read the question. It says, can you borrow under an LLC to buy and hold so you could pay back the hard money lender?
Yeah, absolutely you can do that. That's the great thing about real estate is you can transfer title any which way you want. You just got to be careful in how you do it. You got to make sure you're doing it legally.
I don't know. I think that maybe I wasn't clear on the question. So the way I interpret this question, and Frank, if I'm wrong, it says you're still on here, clarify this for me. But I think his question is, should he be taking title in an LLC when he buys it if his plan is to refinance to pay off the hard money lender? And my answer would be no. So maybe we could disagree on this one.
Well, in DC,
you have
to be buying, right?
Sure.
That's the only way we're going to finance the deal. So what it comes down to, and where I was kind of going, and maybe my answer is going to be a little too long-winded for Kevin, you can buy it in an entity, but the refinance is only going to be done in your personal name. So you would then have to potentially quick claim it or somehow change title into your personal name to get that refinance done. And conversely, if you're in Colorado or Minnesota, you want to buy it in your personal name, refinance it, but then for the asset protection, put it into an LLC or an entity like that, you can certainly do that. You know, there's some things to be aware of. You know, there's the due on sale clause that people sometimes freak out about. So there's certainly some risk in changing title like that, but as long as you're aware of those risks and you understand them, then you're probably going to be okay. But make sure you understand that and what that might mean.
Okay, I think we're going to have to call it quits. It looks like the questions are slowing down. So let's just stop there. This was a fantastic webinar, a fantastic turnout. There's still well over 60 people on the call. They're starting to drop off now. But for those of you that stayed till the end, this is amazing. Thank you so much for coming out. In closing, we are going to do this every month. We'll have Justin back. I think him and I are going to tag team the next one, the very next month. We're going to really dig into deal analytics, getting into the numbers and how to use hard money, or how to analyze and look at a deal using hard money, and how to know what to offer on a property. So that will be next month, 5:30 Mountain Standard Time, the first Tuesday of each month, and you'll get emails and invites through Meetup or our blog or Facebook or emails inviting you to that. So is there anything else that you'd like to share before we close this up?
No, I really appreciate everybody for coming out, everybody sticking around so late, all the great questions. And again, feel free and call us or email us. Email is probably best because we're probably going to get a lot of feedback, but email us and give us detail, and we'll definitely take the time and get back to each and every one of you. So please, our contact information is on the screen. Really appreciate each and every one of you coming out, and we look forward to hopefully working with all of you very soon.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you.